My parents have just sent me the link yesterday for this White House Farm
The White House Farm program.
on Netflix. I've watched an episode and a half.
So it was an ITV program.
Okay. I've watched the first episode and a half. And we have a big American audience, which no doubt are not familiar with the case. Before we go over the questions and stuff then, could you just give like a summary of the case to people who are not familiar with it?
So the situation was that there was a family who lived on a farm, two adopted children and their parents, and the adopted daughter had two children herself. And on an evening in, I think it was 1985, there was a shooting at the farm, and the mother, father, sister, and two children died. And the brother was not present at the property at that time in his statement, and subsequently he was convicted of their murder, all of their murders. He has been sent to prison with life meaning life, which is the harshest tariff you could ever be given. And there are many elements of this case that don't quite make sense. So the story of the case in the eyes of the prosecution was that the son, Jeremy Bamber, was a mendacious, grasping person who wanted to inherit a huge fortune. The family owned thousands of acres of land. They had caravan parks. They were very wealthy. His counter story is that he wasn't present there. His sister had mental health issues, and that she committed the murders. And there are many issues, if you wish to sum it up without ruining your viewing of this program, with the evidence. The evidence was somewhat inconclusively, well, it was tampered. Some elements of it were tampered with. Elements of it were taken away by detectives and burnt at their homes. Elements were destroyed. Some things don't make sense. Whether Mr. Bamber is innocent or guilty, I have a view myself that I don't think the case was properly investigated. There are many people other than myself. There's a left-wing campaigner, Peter Tatchell. He has supported Jeremy Bamber for many years. The leader of the Green Party has supported him for many years. I have a friend who was a friend of the sister. She takes a view to the contrary. I have other friends who were neighbors of theirs. They have a very different view. I do not know whether Mr. Bamber is innocent or guilty, but my conclusion of everything I've read is that basically Essex police have mishandled this information, and there ought to be some form of retrial and recent evidence, without going into all the complications of it, and it's very, very detailed. There needs to be a reinvestigation into this matter, and it looks possible that there may well be.
So my take then, just from watching what I've seen so far, is that the house was locked from the inside. The brother had left a gun laying around. He hadn't put it away properly. And the mentally ill sister was coming. She had been committed and she'd been released, but she was on some strong antipsychotic injections that were being reduced. And we know from shootings in America and stuff like that, coming off medication is a really dangerous time when things can happen. So the gun, the two little kids, dead, parents, dead. Dad tried to get downstairs. She was reloading the gun. Perhaps she'd run out of bullets. And then she just shot herself twice. Now, I've written a book, Clinton, Bush, and CIA Conspiracies from the Boys on the Tracks of Jeffrey Epstein, which features 4 interweaving stories, including the story of Gary Webb. And Gary Webb, there are as many conspiracy theories around whether he was Epstein or whether it was suicide, because he'd shot himself twice in the head. So, had she shot herself twice in the head? Where had the bullets gone in? Do you know?
Well, there were issues with the silencer. There were issues of where the gun was found. There were issues, but the main issue, to be honest, is the fact that there was a telephone call made from the house by the father saying, "My daughter has gone mad with a gun," and that was at whatever time, say 10:29, 11:29, and at 11:31, say, I'm not giving an exact time, the son, Jeremy Bamber, phoned from a place called Goldhanger, which was nearby. It was 2 miles away. He called the police station also and said, "My father's called and said someone's gone mad with a gun." And those 2 phone calls, if those 2 phone calls are proven to be from 2 locations, he could not have been there. That would actually be one major factor in this. And then the second major factor is, he then went to the farmhouse at the instructions of the police, and he was there, and they were there for many hours. And during that period, the police officers recorded movements within the building whilst he was stood outside with the police. So if he were the murderer, how could he have committed the murder if somebody else were inside committing the murder? So they are 2 very key details. And then when the police eventually entered the property, the biggest things are the discrepancies over where the bodies were. At one point, they said there were several bodies on the ground floor. At one point, there was one body. They couldn't remember where the bodies were. And then in this kitchen, the big thing in this whole case is all to do with this silencer, because if the silencer were fitted to the gun, they say that she wouldn't have been able to kill herself with it because it would have made the gun too long. The silencer, the police never found at the beginning, and then they found it later, and then they found several silencers, and then they can't work out which silencer was which. So this silencer is a problem. And the main photo expert, the recent Channel 5 program about this, he illustrated 2 photographs. The first photograph showed the Aga in the kitchen, the oven, with scratch marks around, without scratch marks around it. And the second photograph, which was taken later, had scratch marks. And they claimed that the scratch marks, which caused the red paint to go on the silencer, were indication that Jeremy Bamber caused this. And there are so many issues here of, things were just, it does not make sense. And this man has been rotting in prison, and he clearly did not get a fair trial. I think whether you think the man guilty or not, I do not know whether he committed these crimes or not. I have a friend who went to school with him, and this person really believes in him. I have another friend who was very friendly with the sister, and she thinks the other way. But I don't know. But all I see, and there's a Conservative MP, I think his name's Mr. Hunter, I can't remember his Christian name. He has supported this. The former leader of the Green Party, this Peter Tatchell. There are many people independently who've looked at this case and said, it just doesn't add up.
So originally, the police went in and they determined that it was a murder-suicide. But then a CID guy goes in, like equivalent to the FBI, I guess, for Americans.
And they had the help of a lady called Julie Mugford. Julie Mugford was the girlfriend of Jeremy Bamber. She failed to declare that she'd been offered an incentive from the Sun newspaper. She would be paid, I think it was £25,000, which was a lot of money at the time, if he was convicted. And Miss Mugford now lives in Canada and refuses to talk about it, of course. But, her evidence and a lot of the stories that she came up with were proven to be lies in court, yet her evidence was still believed that he had that he committed this murder. And I think there is so much here. And the fact that one policeman took away evidence and burnt it in his own home. Have you ever heard of a policeman taking evidence home? It's quite bizarre.
So the CID guy became suspicious when he saw that she'd been shot twice. So in America, I did a concealed weapons permit training by ex-cops, and I interviewed two Tonys, mafia, multiple homicide murderer, who told me all the different ways of executing people. His preference was to go in right here, so it circumvented the skull. If you're not like a seasoned killer, you would not know how to commit suicide by shooting yourself twice in the head, because things like the skull can cause the trajectory of bullets to change. The brain stem is like the skinny as a pencil through your neck, and bullets can go in and not go through the brain stem. So it's perfectly feasible that she could have shot herself twice, I believe,
and there were many hours before the police actually raided the house, and there were many hours when movement was detected. And during these hours, the person who is in jail was stood outside. So therefore, he could not be the person moving around inside, which would make it impossible for him to be the killer, because nobody left that building when those police raided it.
So I've always said that court is theatre, and that the state always has the most money to put on the best theatre show. What the hell happened at trial for Jeremy?
Well, Jeremy Bamber, rather like the Menendez brothers, who I'm also interested in their case, at the time, he suited the narrative. Wealthy, son of a wealthy family, someone who put on a show of entitlement. He was a bit spoilt, but he had a privileged upbringing. He went to public school. He probably was arrogant, but that doesn't mean that you're that doesn't mean that you're a killer. And Essex police at that time had another case to do with a man who'd murdered his wife. I cannot remember the name, but their case failed. My friend who went to school with Mr. Bamber tells me about this often. This man, they failed to convict him. It was another wealthy family, and they wanted a conviction. Just like with the Menendez brothers, they failed at that time with the Rodney King riots. The police failed with that. They failed with the O.J. Simpson case. So it suits to get a conviction of somebody. And somebody privileged is a very good person to convict. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor. If you're guilty, you're guilty. And, you should be convicted. But in this particular case, the evidence just does not make sense. The sister had mental health issues. The sister had spoken regularly of wanting to do terrible things to her own family.
And she was proficient with guns.
She knew how to use a gun, and she had complexes. There are a lot of there were suicide notes that went missing. Lots of evidence went missing from this house. I can go into a lot more detail on another occasion when I can put my notes in front of me. But I will say the key details, I would say, are the silencer, the paint marks in the kitchen, the fact that he was outside with the police when movement was sighted inside, and finally the telephone calls. The telephone calls, I think, actually are the most important things. Most people think the silencer is more important, but I would say the fact that he was 2 miles away. How can you be the killer when you've called in a shooting, alleged shooting, someone's gone berserk with a gun from one house, and your father's called from another address? He cannot be in both locations.
It's so common in America now. They say if you ever come across a dead body, don't call the cops because you will be at the top of the suspect list.
Well, he has been locked up for a very long time, and he finally has some hope. He has some good supporters. I think he will get somewhere this time. I think this time they have to review this evidence. I think this TV show helped, rather like with the Menendez brothers. The program helped. In America, my friend Robert Rand, who is a journalist who was involved in the Menendez trial, he cooperated with that program, the True Law and Order True Crime program, and that has got the TikTok generation interested. Now millions of young people are sharing every day the Menendez brothers story.
Before we go to the Menendez brothers, my parents have sent some questions in for you about
may I have some water?
Jeremy.
Right.
Yeah. And while I look up the questions then, how long has Jeremy served?
Well, he was 1985 was when the murder was. I don't know the exact year.
And how is he holding up after all that? Because that is serious institutionalization.
Well, he has had hope taken away from him by, particularly Michael Howard, as Home Secretary, said life means life for you. And that must be devastating if you're an innocent person, whether you're guilty or not. If life means life, it's. You're never getting out of that. And it's like the Menendez, it's the same for them. They've exhausted every line of appeal. They were very lucky because people campaigned for them so that they could be united in jail. He has nobody. Who does he have?
You've already answered the first question that came from my parents. Do you have doubts about Jeremy's conviction? Second is, do you think Sheila committed the crimes?
I don't know who committed the crimes, but I think it's highly likely that it would have been her.